nowhere in that fucking list is the fucking tank. So most of us, when we're playing this for the first time, we're like, oh, okay, get to the second wave. Who the fuck is this guy? Hey guys, welcome to a new segment for us at Outback Gamehouse. This is going to be uh, specific to Lord of the Rings, Heroes of Middle Earth. Both Minzy and I play that actively on a daily basis, and we figured to create a spin-off series that just focuses on that game. And we'll try to do this on a week-to-week basis, an update on how the game's going, any latest news, and I guess our own progress for the game. Um, so, Minzy, I guess, what are your thoughts on the game so far in terms of how you're enjoying it, um, whatnot?
It's Lord of the Rings, so I'm going to love it. um, I find it interesting that they're combining aspects from MSF and Star Wars, Swoger. Um, yeah, I don't mind it too much. There's some things I would change, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to say. It's decent, yeah.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a good Lord of the Rings game for a
Mm,
while. I never played Star Wars Galaxy of Hero, but I do play Marvel Strike Force heavily. And you're right, it has elements of both games. I think it has more Galaxy of
it,
Hero done it
yeah,
than it
definitely.
does MSF, and that's to be expected because they're both from the same developer,
Yeah,
whereas MSF is a separate developer. So uh, the only thing I've seen from MSF so far is the star upgrade system, and the gearing system seems to be MSF. Um,
the gearing is pretty much the same in Star Wars as well. So
okay, but definitely the star brackets,
yeah,
um, the 7 stars, the cost and the number of shards that you need to get those upgrades is very
yes,
much the same as the MSF model.
yeah.
But I think that's where it starts and stops for MSF. I haven't seen any other similarities.
Pretty much. Um, oops. I think that's about it. Yeah, everything else is pretty much Star Wars. So yeah.
Now, in terms of, I guess, what are we? 2 months into launch?
Oh God, I think so. Nearly three, I think actually. Let me scroll up and see if I can find when it launched really quick.
Should have pre-prepared this, but
Ah, should be right. um,
I, I want to say 2 months, but you could be right. It could be three.
it's
Uh,
pre-registration. Oh my God, it's been no, it hasn't been 4 months, has it?
oh wow! No, I
Has
think it
it?
has.
Has it been 4 fucking months? Holy shit!
Well, I thought it was May. I thought it was start
um,
of May, but I could be wrong. Uh, I'm just going back and looking.
yeah, it was the start of May. Yeah,
It
end
is.
of April. Yeah,
Yeah. So no, it's 3 months, maybe
three
three and
months.
a
Yeah,
half, if anything.
yeah,
Definitely not 4 months.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So we're 3 months then. Wow. I didn't expect it to be 3 months. I thought it was 2 months.
yeah. No,
So
it's gone quick.
it has gone quick, but in terms of development, so we finally got raids, which we'll speak about in depth in a bit, but it's taken what, the good part of 3 months to finally get some sort of content apart from arena.
Yes,
which I think in general the community have been kind of to date kind of eagerly waiting for some content.
Yeah.
Because I think prior to raid, well, I mean, the raid only at the moment lasts for 24 hours, and
Mm.
outside of raid, you log in, do your daily objectives, um, and then you're logging in every 15 minutes or whenever to do your 5 arena attacks. And outside of that, there's really not much to do apart from claiming your free energy,
Mm.
getting your free loot box that you get, and there's really nothing else to do in the
Yeah.
game. I think in terms of launch, it could have been better.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
like you
think it
really,
definitely lost a lot of steam. Um, for instance, I don't understand why they didn't launch with in the beta there was like kind of weekly guild objectives where it was just like do this, do 5 abilities with X character for
hmm,
so yeah.
yeah,
I don't know why they took that out. So
like,
because it actually made it quite interesting. It was just little different objectives to do.
it's just something for
Yeah.
people to do,
Yeah.
and people were just starving for content. Really,
Mm.
like that's not much. It's a small kind of milestone based thing, but at least it gives something for people to do.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like I played the beta as well, not as much as you did, but um, yeah, I'm surprised that they took features away,
Mm.
uh, or at least I can understand if they took it away to kind of fine tune it for
Yeah.
global release. But I mean, we're 3 months in, we still haven't seen that feature return.
Yeah.
Um, and they had beta for what, a year? I think it was a year. It felt like a year.
I'm not sure because it was only very short in Australia. It was like it
In Australia,
was only a
well,
few months in Australia. I think like 4 months or so.
that's well, they had 2 phases of the beta, right?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised. I think the raid could have come sooner. I do understand the other side where if they had released raids earlier, most of us wouldn't have had a very competitive raid team, really.
Yeah.
Um, to compete in difficulty 3 in chapter 1, you really needed a very well built. I mean, seems like the most common team was the Rivendell team.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, because I think that's what most people had focused on, especially if you had Elrond. Um, but really, to do well, I think you needed them at Gear 7 or above. You know,
Yeah. Definitely.
um,
Yeah.
so if they had released raids a month or two ago, I'd say most of us wouldn't
Be
have
able to
even.
actually do it. Yeah.
I mean, difficulty 1 or 2
Mm.
probably could have done okay. Difficulty 3, probably not.
Mm.
Now to get that first raid box, everyone needed, I believe it's, should
I think it
check,
was 160-ish per person, wasn't it?
160K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not too much. I mean, that's what, one team maxing difficulty 1 and a bit extra,
Yeah.
and you're there.
Yeah.
Let me just quickly check. I've got the game open at the moment. But yeah, like even so, um, so you need 1 million, right?
Yeah.
1 million guild point score to kind of to get that first box. So
Yeah.
that's not much. It's only around 30,000 per person. So
Yeah.
so they could have. they could have easily have released the raids earlier, um, in my opinion, because I don't think we needed to have teams built for difficulty 3 straight
Yeah.
away. I think if they had released it sooner, and even if most of us just were able to, you know, only do difficulty 1, I think that's fine. We would have still
Mm.
been able to get the first raid box,
Yeah.
which I think that's all would have mattered. It would have been worse if they released the raids and no one was able to get the first raid box, because then that would have been a waste of time.
That would have been bad.
Because you, especially because it was so much RNG. Like, imagine going through the raid, spending like endless refreshes trying to get the perfect run,
Mm.
and then at the end
Yeah,
of the
you
day
don't get it.
you don't get any reward. That would have been a slap in the face.
That would have been bad.
But
Imagine the outrage.
oh, it would have been
Oh,
horrendous. It would have been like, what is the point of this, you know?
yeah.
But at the cutoff that the first kind of box is at, yeah,
Mm, yeah.
probably could have seen raids maybe a month sooner, in
Yeah.
my opinion. They obviously wanted to stage their releases. Obviously wanted to get Elrond's kind of release out of the way, which meant you needed Arwen and then Elladan and then Elrond, and then obviously we had the raids after.
Yeah.
Um, Seeing as we're talking about the raids, what were your thoughts on chapter 1?
Chapter one, I found probably too RNG heavy,
Hmm.
but in terms of actual mechanics, I thought it was pretty cool. It's very simple, but it's an introductory raid. It doesn't need to be like insane.
Yeah,
And
for
it's
an,
the first chapter of the raid as well. So
yeah. So coming from Marvel Strike Force, this is obviously a very different raid structure, to how we're used to in that game. Obviously, for you guys that play Galaxy of Hero, this is kind of similar in terms of how it's run,
yeah,
to the raids over there. So it's interesting where, um, I guess in this game you have raids and then there will be multiple chapters, each chapter running for 24 hours.
yeah,
Um, so obviously our first raid only ran for 1 day because we only had the first chapter, but then once chapter 2 comes, it'll run for 2 days and so forth.
yeah,
Um, Chapter 1, I agree, it was very, yeah, RNG heavy. And I guess RNG on top of RNG. I like the I agree with you. I like the kind of principle of it. I think maybe if they tweak it a bit, maybe if instead of a 10% increase for the bomber, um, maybe each hit increases his chance by 20% might
mm,
be a bit better, because at 5 stacks, that then becomes 100% chance for him to hit his own team. Because I was finding, like with the Rivendell team, I could only get him to about 6 stacks, sometimes 7 stacks.
yes.
And
I
I was finding, like, with that, out of 10 attempts, you would think he would hit his own team 6 out of 10
mm,
times. But I was finding he was hitting me about 80% of the time. And like
yeah,
it just didn't make sense. And I didn't do multiple runs, like I did with Rivendell, because they were my strongest team. I think I spent close to 2 hours just all up on my Rivendell team, just constantly retrying.
yeah,
Um, and that was hundreds of attempts, and it just didn't make sense. I think there was something funky with the,
yeah,
um, eh, and the way like odds work. It's obviously each individual, um, fight, or each individual kind of, thing is, independent of all the other attempts you make. But you would think over time
Yeah.
the numbers kind of make sense, but it didn't in
Yeah,
my
it didn't
instance.
for me either.
And I had attempts with my Road to Rivendell team who were able to get over 10 stacks just because of the amount of assists that they were doing. I was able to get, 11 and 12 stacks on the bomber, and I had those hitting me, which doesn't make sense because that's technically 110 and 120% chance for him to
Yeah,
hit his own team.
yeah,
So there's something definitely a bit weird
yeah.
with his stacks.
I don't know if like the values are off, if they placed a decimal point somewhere wrong. um, but yeah, like the same thing was happening to me. I was getting like 8, 9 stacks pretty consistently.
Hmm.
And like 5, 6 runs in a row, I'd be getting the bomb thrown at me. It's just like the odds of that happening.
Yeah. I mean, it can happen, but the odds of it happening are very slim.
Yes.
So, but so that I can understand. When you've got 10, 11, 12 stacks and they're still you, then there's something definitely wrong because
Yeah.
that's no longer a chance. That's something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing was to then get a good score, you needed multiple waves of these enemies, right? So let's just say that's the first wave. To get like a good, 500k plus score on difficulty 3, you needed multiple waves of these guys.
Yeah.
So that's doing that over and over again.
Over and
So like,
over.
so like, you know, you do it, you finally get a good first wave, and you're like, yes, okay. So that roughly nets you about, I found 100 to 150k on the first wave, and then you're like,
Yeah.
okay, sweet. Now you got to do that, three
Again.
again and again and again, and to get that kind of 900k score, you needed to do it, more
You
than
needed to
3 or 4
pray
times.
to every type of god that there wasn't a double tank spawn.
Yes, so I was getting to that. So not only did you need the bomber to do his thing, you then each wave had a random spawn, right? So when you looked at the raid data, you know how if you go into the raid and you press the I, you can see the possible enemies that you're
Yeah.
facing. They did not put the raid guard on that list.
Don't they?
No,
I swear to God they did.
no, go in and look. Unless they've changed it. Unless they've fucking changed it recently. If you go in and look, they've got the Skull Crusher, they've got the Mangler, they've got Nuraz, who they call a Shadow Seer.
Yeah.
They've got
Firestarter and
Firestarter.
Bomber.
They got
Yeah, wow, the tank's not there.
they got the War Drummer. Nowhere in that fucking list is the fucking tank. So most of us, when we're playing this for the first time, we're like, oh, okay, get to the second wave. Who the fuck is this guy?
I didn't even realize that.
And then,
Oh
and
my
then,
God.
and then you're clicking him in the middle of the fight, going, "What the fuck does this guy do? Oh, he's a fucking tank. Wow, okay,
And
they've got a
there's
tank."
two of them.
Yeah. So in the first wave, you get the 6 that they've detailed when you click the information. Those 6 spawn, right?
Yeah.
On the first wave. You would imagine it'll be the same on each wave, but no, it then becomes a random generation of not just those 6, but plus the guard. So it's 7. So you could have, and which I've had, and like you mentioned, you could have 2 guards and then 2 bombers.
That's just like, yeah, I need to put my phone down for a little while. Something's gonna go flying.
And I've tried to deal with that, and it's near impossible.
It's yeah,
I find the best way is to just kill one of those guards. If you got to, just go hammer at that guy and try to kill him before
mm,
his turn, and then dispel the other one. So if I had Arwen, then I'd save her uh, boon removal
yeah,
on the guard and remove his taunt because it's a taunt, it's not a provoke as well. So you either have to remove it or you got to wait for his turn for the taunt to go.
yeah. And tanks are slow.
Right, as they should be.
Yes.
And it was just painful. And then you got two bombers that are meanwhile about to blow their heads.
Yeah.
So it's just, most of the time, if I got that on the second wave, I just quit.
Yeah,
I just
pretty
went
much.
menu, quit.
What's even better is you like got three good waves and then you get the double tank. It's like, oh, it's so close, but so far.
Right, right. So if it was wave two, I'm like, oh, I'm still early on that I can
Yeah.
go. I can cash out and go, let's try again. When you're on the third or fourth and that pops up, you're like, oh, I'm so close to a good score and I got to deal with this bullshit.
Yep. It's actual pain.
So I don't mind RNG mechanics to kind of increase the amount of replayability in a game mode, but I think there needs to be a good kind of
Balance.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was a bit too heavy on the RNG. If they could kind of reduce that a bit, I
Yeah.
think that was a decent first raid.
Mm.
But yeah, in terms of teams that did well, we did notice obviously Rivendell, and that's probably because, like I mentioned, everyone's got that built,
Yeah.
especially if you've got Elrond. Um, RTR, who were the kind of the team that everyone loved to hate for so
Yeah.
long, surprisingly did well. People who had built them, did post 900k scores for them, and I could see that. Mine were only difficulty two level, but
Yeah.
they did personally they did well, and especially getting stacks on that bomber. Like I mentioned, they got 11, 12 stacks on him. So they were a surprisingly good team.
Mm. The retaliate from Sam does quite a lot because you don't actually even really have to hit the others. He's just retaliating, and it's like, free damage.
Yeah, so one thing to note is with a lot of these teams, you do have to invest, and that's the same thing with any of the teams, including the Rivendell Elves
Yeah.
team. Um, Most teams become, totally different once you get them to a certain ability level. Like
Yeah.
it's just day and night in
Mm.
terms of
Yeah, like
how much.
Elra here and his level 6 passive. That's
e- Exactly.
yeah.
Like I at level five, I swear he was not retaliating that
Mm.
much. But then as soon as you get six, it's just ooh,
Yeah.
chef's kiss, right?
Yeah.
And the same with RTR. I think once you get them built up, once they're kind of assisting a lot, and once Sam's retaliating a lot, it really, really pays off.
Yeah.
Um,
And the haste from Mary as well is really nice.
yes, yes. Especially when you're trying to get to the other team, like to do as much as you can before the
Yeah.
bomber goes. It's like any kind of turn meter manipulation, whether you're slowing the other team, reducing their turn meter, whether you're speeding yourself up, I
Yeah.
think is going to be key.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, also any sort of assist, and that's why I think the Rohan trio also did well. So obviously with Irma with his assists,
Yeah.
with him assisting a lot, and obviously Eothane with his turn meter
Mm.
manipulation. Seen a lot of scores with the trio plus, you know, two good characters added to them.
Yeah. Not to mention the might from Aowen as well. That helps a lot, especially since it's like turn one.
Yeah, yeah, and plus, she calls someone in to attack, so it's not a
Yeah.
wasted move either. Like,
Yeah.
you are attacking with that move. Um, Mordor was another interesting one. I did see mixed results with Mordor. It seems like, again, as I said, it's
Gotta
day and night
invest.
when, yeah, the stronger Mordor teams out there um, posted good scores, but they've got high abilities and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Plus, that team is heavy AOE.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and with this, you want to be gaining stacks on the bomber, but you also want to be reducing the health on the other orcs, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I found if you can get the other orcs around 60%, the bomber was insta killing him, killing all the rest, right? And
Yeah.
then you get additional points when the bomber kills his
Yeah.
own allies. So I could see Mordor being a good team because of all that heavy AoEs, because you'll be hitting the bomber, gaining stacks on him, but at the same time depleting his allies as
Yeah.
well, getting them to a level where he can insta kill them.
Yeah.
With a lot of these single target teams, you're either focusing on the bomber or you're focusing on someone else. So
Yeah.
it's hard
Exactly.
to do both.
I think that's why Isengard struggled so much. And that in the evading, so you weren't healing.
Yeah, Isengard were another mixed bag.
Yeah.
I did see some that did well, but they had like Nuraz
Mm.
added to them or Ironheart or Brute added to them. So I think they needed someone that brought the AoE.
Yeah.
Because between Uglug and Morher, you had two characters that were assisting each other. So, you could easily get 4 stacks just between the two of them.
Yeah.
Um, so they were good for that. But then you're right, they lacked the AoE. And then the self heal, because of the evade on the bomber, you weren't generally applying debuffs. And then you weren't getting the benefits of Uglug's leadership ability. So
Yeah.
I what I have found is maybe um, full teams may not be the way to go. I think hybrids
Yeah.
seem to be doing slightly better. So even with uh, Rivendell, I did see some scores with Lomian added as the fifth. So you had the full 5 Rivendell team, but I think in general people were adding the likes of Ironhide, Brute, to
Yeah.
add that fifth who brought an AoE
Yeah.
outside of Eladon or even Elrond's. So yeah, I think in general we're seeing a lot of, I guess, mixed teams, and I like that because it brings out theory crafting and other benefits,
Yeah.
which is good.
I saw a
Rather
lot
than
of halberds as well, actually, especially with either with Rivendell or Rohan the most.
yeah, well, I mean, he's a good healer,
Mm.
even though he kind of suffered with the star increase.
Yeah.
Um, now we should have probably spoken about the star increase. That was very let's say interesting.
I think it's a
I
necessary evil.
Yeah, I think the timing was poor.
Yeah.
It came straight after Elrond's release ended.
Yeah.
So a lot of people settled with a 5-star Elrond because really at that time getting to 6 and 7 star didn't really give you much of a benefit.
Mm.
So the value for money wasn't there for people who were spending. The people who could go for 7 star did go for 7 star, but
Yeah,
obviously
whale's gonna
those
whale.
right. Well, yeah. Well, I'd say Krakens are going to Kraken,
Yeah.
but dolphins and whales they kind of sat on that 5 star because spending that extra to get 6 star
Mm.
versus how much they would have gained in
Yeah,
stats
it wasn't
wasn't
worth it.
wasn't
Yeah.
worth it, right? So I think there was a lot of uproar because of that. Also, a lot of people, weren't investing in other characters like farming their shards, getting
Yeah.
them up as well. Um, I could understand the move because, as far as EA and CG were concerned, they probably weren't making money. People weren't farming characters up beyond 4 star.
Yeah.
Um, and they would have got the data from Elrond, and people weren't spending as much on the 6 and 7 star unlocks.
Yeah.
Um, so they needed to have made that change,
Yeah.
uh, for 6 and 7 stars to be worth it. I think the timing was poor. Again, why that wasn't discovered in beta, I'm not sure.
Mm.
You know, you would have thought the data to seeing the stat increases would have been indicated in beta.
Yeah. I
Um,
think it might have been different in beta, to be honest. Because I know that they changed a lot of the characters' kits around and stuff like that. So I have a feeling that they might have changed it then.
there were some changes, and I think there were changes to how gear and stars and stuff like that interacted and the base
Yeah.
stats and stuff. Because a lot of the characters did feel different from beta to here, not just ability wise, just with stats and
Mm.
their power and stuff like that. So there were obviously changes, and maybe that played a factor. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, would it have been better to make those star changes after the first legendary or like a year into the game like MSF did?
Yeah.
I think it's better to get it over and done with.
Yeah.
Would have been nice to have been done at the start and before the first legendary, but in the longevity of the game, Elrond's going to be, as the meta shifts, Elrond's going to be forgotten or he's going to be very low down.
Yeah.
So I guess it's better to get it over and done with,
Pretty much. Yeah.
and let the community move on. But yeah, so forgot what we were talking about for the raid chapters, but
I mean, we pretty much covered chapter one. So
yeah, chapter one. So chapter let's go on to chapter two. So
yeah.
they've obviously, what was it? Yesterday for us.
I think so. Yeah.
We got new information in terms of chapter two, who the kind of the boss is for chapter two. So obviously the bomber was really the kind of uh,
The
the
boss.
boss for chapter one.
Yeah.
Chapter two is the cave troll,
Mm.
Mariah cave troll. Now, a lot of people have compared that to, I think there's a raid boss in Star Wars Galaxy of Hero that
The pit raid.
maybe.
It's the Rancor that Luke fights in episode 6.
That's right, Rancor. I saw that name. Yeah, so a lot of people are thinking it's similar to that.
It looks similar.
Right, so I haven't played Star Wars Galaxy of Hero, so maybe you could explain that Rancor and how that works.
The Rancor in Star Wars I think the mechanics are going to be different because the Rancor in Star Wars is you kill the guards first, and then the second part, the Rancor actually comes out. You got to shoot the controls for the door at the right time, so it closes on the Rancor and you like burst him down, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And there's later stages and stuff like that, but it's pretty much all like fighting the Rancor. This, I think the only really similarity is that they look similar. um, because I think they said that like disrupted and stuff like that is going to be really good for
So
the troll.
yeah, so I'll read out that paragraph just the on the troll. So the Mariah Cave Troll is a massive creature who is able to resist damage and banes with his thick, stony skin. In battle, he gains momentum, a unique boon that makes him faster and empowers his attacks by using his abilities, counter-attacking and blocking incoming attacks. To defeat this cave troll, you would need to control this momentum by landing crit hits, bringing dispels, and inflicting specific banes like disrupted. The most effective way to defeat the cave troll is by intercepting the momentum boon. And then they talk about this is where they sell Haradrim and how they're made for
Yeah,
them. So we'll speak about Haradrim in a bit. But so yeah, so they're saying crit hits, dispels, and disrupted. Uh, you know, good for controlling his momentum. So by the sound of it, yeah. So every time he uses his abilities, every time he counterattacks or when he blocks incoming attacks, it makes him faster and
mm.
stronger. So it sounds like it'll get to a stage where it'll probably just wipe your
Yeah,
team just because of how
a
much
ramping in
momentum.
rage type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not sure how Rancor was. It sounds like it's a bit different in
It's
that
a
sense.
bit different.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting how because they mention he resists damage and banes, but at the same time they tell you to bring specific banes like disrupted.
Yeah.
So landing those disrupts would be interesting if he's got a big resistance.
Mm.
So you might need to build up your character that applies disrupt,
Yeah.
get them to good levels. But
It's
yeah,
interesting that critical hits are gonna, what it seems like, remove stacks of momentum.
yeah. So I mean, crit hit is probably going to be key if he's got a resistance to banes.
Mm.
Yeah, to me it seems like applying crit hits might be easier because that's based on your individual character's crit chance, right? So
Yeah.
um, yeah, you might see characters that do good crits, do well on that. Yeah, that's just him. So it'd be interesting to see what the support enemies are around him. Maybe, like you mentioned with Rank or how there's guards, maybe there might be guards with him where you got to kill them, remove their taunt so that you can then do anything to him.
Yeah.
Or he's just one guy by himself and you're just
I,
focusing on him.
I have a feeling it's just gonna be him because in Star Wars it's the first. It's not really a chapter. It's more of a phase because in Star Wars the whole raid is just on day one type of thing.
Hmm.
It's not spread out over multiple days. But in phase one, it's the guards. Phase two, it's the Rancor where you got to drop the door on him. Phase three is something or other, and phase four is pretty much the same.
Right. Okay.
I haven't
I
done Rancor in ages.
No, no, no. So yeah, it sounds like it'll probably be him by himself,
Yeah,
but we won't know until it launches, obviously.
yeah,
But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what teams do well on that. So again, you can only use five teams, five attempts on chapter two as well.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, your teams refresh between chapters, so you can use the same five teams again in chapter two. But I think we'll probably see a difference in terms of which teams do well in chapter one versus which teams do well in chapter two.
chapter two. Yeah,
I can still see Rivendell doing well in chapter two.
yeah,
Elra here, I think suffered in chapter one because his multi-hit um,
Doesn't, yeah.
doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Um,
The counter attacks are still nice, though, to be
the
fair.
counterattacks were nice, yes. And Lamayan, his multi-hit
Onion.
attack, Onion, as we affectionately call him, weren't really doing much either.
Yeah.
But I think in chapter two, because they both crit well, I think in chapter two they might come to light there,
Yeah.
and they might do well. So I think Rivendell team on paper should still do well in both chapters.
Yes.
Um, Isengard, I have a feeling, will do better in chapter two. So chapter one, as we said, a kind of mixed bag. Chapter two, I think they'll come to their own because they do have a disrupt
Mm.
that they can apply.
Yeah.
Um, more her crits like crazy. Um, plus you got the assists and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um, I think in that sense, where if it is just him, those single target teams
Yeah.
will start to
Actually, like, yeah, do something, yeah.
do something better.
I think Morzar's value is going to be increased 100% when chapter 2 comes out. But I'm wondering if it will make him better in chapter 1 because of the banes that he applies. It's just kind of healing, extra
Hmm.
healing, because he can't actually attack the evading guy to land debuffs. Morzar will do that for you, kind of thing,
Yeah,
by applying debuffs to everyone else. So I'm wondering if that he will make Isengard better in chapter 1.
and that could be the case. Again, he's a character that a lot of people ditched,
Mm,
I mean, myself included. But yeah, it's good to see kind of different kind of characters come to light.
yeah,
And I like that. I like, coming from MSF where it's just predefined teams, there's no thought. It's just, this is what you do, go
yeah.
do it kind of thing. And I think this is good in the sense that it allows kind of creativity and
Flexibility.
theory crafting and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Uh, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how chapter two plays.
Mm.
Hopefully, there's not as much RNG. Um,
Yeah, that'd be ouch.
uh, but yeah, it was so. Aside from the chapter two announcement, obviously, as I mentioned, Haradrim
Mm.
are the team for this month. So we've got the first of the Marquees,
Yes.
Tibeb, I think is
Tibeb.
how you
Yeah.
pronounce it, who's the leader for the team. Now, it's an interesting team. So you mentioned it's similar to Phoenix
Yes.
from Star Wars Galaxy of Hero.
Yes. Similar but different. It's similar in the way that they all share their passives with each other.
Mhm.
But Phoenix they're kind of the beginner squad. They're kind of the first squad that you ever really go for when you start the game.
Mm.
The Haradrim, they all share the same passives, but they have a mechanic where they put a debuff on you, and whenever somebody with that debuff gains a buff, the debuff will be removed, I believe, or they gain a poison, something
They
like
gain
that.
poison. So the
Yeah.
Black Serpent's poison
Yes.
is just a bane that does nothing until that enemy gains
Yeah.
a boon,
Yeah.
and they gain that boon. It removes the boon and replaces the Black Serpent's poison with an actual poison. So
Mm.
it's kind of like it's twofold. It's a disrupt with poison basically. So it stops
Yeah, basically, yeah.
because it
It's like disrupt but with stacks. Kind of like
yeah,
provoke in a way.
yeah. So it's yeah, it's disrupt with poison basically. So it stops the character from gaining a boon,
Mm.
So it works like a disrupt, but then it adds the poison on top. So hence why it will be good for the troll, because it's a, as they mentioned, disrupts will be good, but this is twofold because it adds the poison, which reduces the does damage on the troll.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, so it's an interesting team with the shared passive, with their specific boon bane that they apply with the black serpents,
Mm.
and also the turn meter manipulation. So you got Wubet that applies slow, you've got Tibeb that applies haste, you've got Rebel that removes turn meter.
Yeah.
So it's a very, and we mentioned it where if you are from Marvel Strike Force, it's like that first meta with Black Widow, Quake.
Yes.
But
Quake, that's the character. Oh my god, I couldn't remember her name for the life of me the other day.
where you've got Black Widow applying speed up, you got Quake applying slow. So it's like, improving, increasing your own team by, and also reducing the other team.
Yeah.
And in a turn meter game, like that's very
That
strong because
was the squad back in the day.
at the end of the day, for a turn meter game, the more turns you can make,
Yeah.
it's going to give a huge advantage for
More
yourself.
healing,
So
more damage, more buffs,
exactly.
more clearing debuffs, stuff like that. Yeah.
So on paper, they seem like a very strong team, and I'll be interested to see how they go in arena.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
I think like Webet goes before most of the Rivendell teams, um, and he can get that slowed down. And once if you can get that advantage on them on the Rivendell team, and get that extra turn on top of them,
Yeah.
um, and especially with the Black Serpent's poison, like if you can apply that on Eladin, so he doesn't
Mm.
get his stacks of provokes,
Yeah.
and then it's just a matter of killing Elrond.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do well.
I
So
feel
it'd
like
be
for
interesting.
most people, for most people with Elrond, that they don't really have the resources to bring Haradrim up. So I think Elrond's just going to beat them anyway, just pure power difference.
Hmm.
But for whales and krakens, I'm not entirely convinced that Haradrim will beat the elves. I think that Arwen, if you get, I think it's her level 6 on her passive, she has a chance to clear debuffs on your team.
Yeah. So at level 6 on her turn,
Yeah.
she does. Also, her second special,
Yeah,
if you
clears
get that,
debuffs.
well, it does. But I was more thinking if at level 5 you get that a turn earlier. Um,
Ah, yeah.
so
Yeah.
up until now,
It hasn't really been needed.
it
Yeah.
hasn't been needed, and I think most people have recommended just leaving it at level 4, because in some instances getting it at level 5 and getting it a turn earlier
Yeah, the way that the
is,
AI plays it just
yeah,
uses it, and
on
there's no.
defense
It's a waste of an ability. Yeah.
could be detrimental, right? So but I think in this instance that could be a strong move,
Yeah.
especially against the likes of Haradrim, if that is going to be the next meta, or if they can be competing against the elves, that
Yeah.
could potentially halt that as well. So
Yeah.
um, we won't know until obviously the second marquee comes out. But yeah, they look like an interesting team. They're obviously sold to take out chapter 2.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to do that, and that's fine. You can chase kind of the teams that they sell, but I still think there are going to be other teams, as we mentioned, that will still do well in chapter 2. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think for most players, apart from people that just are able to spend everything in the game, I think in general for most players, having just 5 teams,
Mm. And really focusing on those. Yeah.
on those 5 teams will do better,
Yeah.
rather than having 6 or 7 teams to cycle through. I think just have 5 teams. And, like I said, some of those 5 teams would do well in chapter 1, but then some of the other 5 of those 5 teams will do better in chapter 2 and chapter 3
Yes.
and so forth. And I think that's probably the way to go. In terms of the release strategies, so Arwen and Elodin are currently in the main store
Mm.
with purchase via Crystal, which so far is following the Galaxy of Hero model.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, and it'll be interesting to see where they go
Me
here on.
too. That this will make or break the game for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are waiting to see what happens. I could see them going to a hard campaign. A lot of people are hoping they would go to Guild. To be honest, Guild is probably the easiest farm out of all the campaign.
It is in Galaxy of Heroes as well. It's
Yeah.
very good.
So I could see them going to like Shadow Chapter 5, for instance, or Shadow Chapter 6, and just being.
I think they'll probably do one hard node, one. I was about to say Cantina, one guild campaign. That's, I believe, usually how they do it in Star Wars, or something similar.
Okay.
They don't too often release characters in stores in Star Wars, just because, same thing with MSF, you can hoard resources. But in this game, they've built into the game that the resources have a cap for the stores. So I think that gives them more flexibility to put them into stores as well.
Oh, so you mean like the guild store, the
not actual
challenge
money store,
the guild store, the challenge store, the arena store. Yeah, those are other options as well. The challenge store needs tweaking. I mean, it's Halbarad and Bolg. Like, even if you focus farm 1,
I only just got my Halbarad to 4-star the other day.
Yeah. So even if you just focus farm 1 and ignore the other, it's still going to take you years to kind of get them up to usable, like high stars.
Yeah.
So it's a bit ridiculous. I don't know what they can do there, or maybe increase the amount of challenge relics, I think they call it, that you earn.
Well, I'm sure they'll add more tiers to the difficulty, to the challenges. Sorry.
Yeah.
Eventually, so
something needs to change there. It's just not. It just doesn't make sense, especially with the star upgrades. Of those 2 characters. So yeah, hopefully something happens there. In terms of the release cadence,
it's coming up to the time. So in Star Wars, usually they release a character, they have the marquee event, I think about 4 to 6 weeks later. They put them into the store for crystals. And then I think another 6 weeks after that, 6 or 8 weeks after that, they become hard node farmable.
Yeah. So it's about that time.
Yeah.
But even in terms of new character release cadence, the back-to-back light releases hurt, especially with the luminous crystals.
Yeah.
That aside, we've had Marquee, Legendary, Marquee. So
Legolas and Gimli as well.
Oh yeah. I forgot about those 2. Now, and the 2 weeks in between?
I think so, yeah.
That's a very heavy release cadence, in my opinion, especially with little to do in the game.
Yeah. With the amount of resources, yes.
Well, but the thing is to the good thing is you can get them for 3-star for free. But to get them to 5-star, you do have to spend. So you can get 3-star for free. You can get 4-star for a $20 pack, and then to get the 5th star, you need about 7,000 crystals on
Yeah.
average, um, which is a bit of money. And you got to spend that every 2 weeks, pretty
Mm.
much.
Yeah.
I think they could probably try different release methods. Not every new character needs
Yeah.
to be a marquee.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it in Star Wars Galaxy of Hero, but maybe they could do one mark like for each new character, each new team, for instance. So in this case, with Haradrim,
Mm.
Tibeb could be a marquee, but Old Mate that's coming in 2 weeks, maybe that could be a guild campaign character or a store
Yeah.
character or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Star Wars is they do release their marquees fairly. I don't, they usually release it like every 2 weeks or so, right? But then sometimes they could go a month without not releasing any.
Hmm.
So it kind of gives you that break. Also, it's the whole like 3 month thing. They after 3 months they go into the hard node. So it's not too bad in Star Wars. It is, I think, with the amount of resources we have at the moment, it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. I think once we get more raid, more gold, more resources,
Mm.
it should lessen the pain a bit. Because even if you do get them unlocked, you can't really do anything with
Yeah,
them.
I
Have
think
nothing.
it's. I think they're kind of just pushing out characters just to get them out as well.
Hmm.
Because most of the characters in Star Wars are marquees. There are different ones like through Conquest, TB, and stuff like that. As I said, it's not too bad on Star Wars because usually you can just like wait. You got so much things in your backlog to do that by the time the marquee comes to a hard node farm, it's like, oh, okay, it's just another thing to add to the checklist type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. Where yeah, I don't know
I
how to
mean,
explain it.
but I mean, if they follow a particular routine where, they come out and only a certain amount of people get that character to 5 stars, then it becomes purchase fired crystals and then some sort of farmability, you know, in 3 months. At least that's some sort of regular cadence. In
Yeah,
MSF, it is so
2 years
random.
later.
Right. There have been characters that have been released in MSF,
Yeah,
and it's been literally 2 years until you can farm them.
yeah,
It's just ridiculous. And by that time, there has beens, right? Like it just doesn't
yeah.
make any sense. So if they follow a regular cadence and they're consistent, I can live with that. Um,
I,
with it.
I pray it is not like MSF. That would kill me. I have PTSD from that dead set.
So
uh,
yeah, so we'll have to see. It's a watch the space kind of thing. Now I guess the other big thing is obviously with raids is the raid release character or legendary is Gandalf the Grey, or as a lot of people call him, Gandalf the Blue, because for whatever reason he is
Blue.
blue.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's because Grey probably doesn't really kind of look well in
Yeah.
terms of
It doesn't have the pop.
yeah, in terms of aesthetics, and plus whenever they release Gandalf the White,
It'll be very similar.
it'll
Yes.
be very similar. So this will give it a bit of definition, but
Yeah.
still, it looks a bit odd. It was like a blue gray.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
I mean, his
um,
hat is actually meant to be that blue gray color, but his robes aren't. Yeah, no, they're meant to be gray.
um, yeah. Anyway, but uh, with the with his release, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Um, like a lot of people haven't even got a single shard even after the first raid.
Mm.
We will get 5 shards because of compensation. But yeah, it's I haven't done the mats, but it's going to take quite a bit
Yeah.
to unlock him. So that fellowship team is going to be a bit of a long term team by the looks of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've only got two Marquees, so I imagine the other two Marquees are probably a few months away because
Mm.
there's no point getting them if you're not going to have Gandalf.
Next week.
Oh, would not be surprised.
I wouldn't either.
But I imagine after Haradrim, they're probably going to release another Shadow team. Um, and who knows if. I mean, the data mines still show that Haradrim unlock Witch King. That hasn't changed even
Yeah,
after the latest update. So maybe there's going to be a Nazgul team.
they were
Uh,
very strong in beta.
oh, they were a PvP team. But
Yeah,
so,
100%.
so quick, so
Super
fast.
fast, just stun
Yeah.
on first turn and heal block on the rest of the team. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, these guys are gonna roll.
Yeah, so if they unlock Witch King, then you'd expect because there's no Nazguls in the
Mm,
game at the moment, so they're going to have to release four characters as well.
yeah.
So
And two
that's going to
are
be
definitely
interesting.
in the game files because two are in the beta.
Yeah,
The Southern Shadow and Blade of the East, and someone else. Oh god, I don't remember the last one.
I think the full team is even in the PVE on some of the fights as well.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, it is. Yeah.
so. They're definitely in there,
Mm,
but how they release it as playable characters will be interesting to see.
yeah,
Um, But yeah, speaking of, sorry, just quickly, but speaking of the raid and the bug that they had where people could claim the rewards multiple times.
that was a thing.
Yeah, where were you?
I don't know. I've been playing Baldur's Gate.
So that was a whole big thing. So what happened was, so we were asleep.
that,
Uh,
that explains it.
so it happened during our nights in Australia. So basically, when the rewards came out, people could go in and claim it multiple times, which meant, it was 300,000 per chest, right? You could rack up like millions of golds just from spamming it. And some people did. And obviously that alerted CG somehow, and they um, removed the rewards immediately and then put anyone that had clicked it more than once on a temp ban.
Oh,
So basically, if you had clicked it, twice, your account was temporary banned. Um, which, in the grand scheme of things, was the right move, I guess, because that allowed them to then step in, reverse anything,
mm,
and return the accounts. Um, it's annoying. Like I think like twice is an accident, right? Like if you
yeah,
clicked it and then you clicked it again, you're like, oh, what the
yeah.
fuck?
But like three
If
times,
you
it's like,
then if you then
yeah,
keep going, that's
yeah,
intentional, to
yeah.
be honest. So I feel for the people that clicked it twice because that could have been an accident.
Mm,
The other thing is some of these temp bans took, I think, 24 hours or more to resolve for them to reverse things and return the. So raid keys were lost
oof,
as well.
oof.
Uh, so a lot of people were filthy over that. Um, at the end of it's tough. At the end of the day, it was a fuck up by Capital Games,
Yeah,
but some people did, exploit
do
it.
it intentionally. Yeah,
So it's one of those things like what's the best action? Um, I think what they did is probably the right move because the longer you wait to resolve it, the harder it is to kind
yeah.
of um,
Revert everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
revert accounts. And so I think what they did was any unspent gold they removed, but it sounded like anything that people had spent, they've just left because it might have been too hard to reverse. Who knows? But
Right.
anyone that didn't click more than once is getting a compensation. But that
So
compens
that fair enough. Okay, so that's why I kind of just saw free stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, so they're releasing five Gandalf shards, 150,000 gold, 100 gems, and five shadow and light crystals.
I need
Eh,
those light side crystals so bad. I've got nearly 300 dark side crystals, so I'm fine for that.
yeah, it's part of the reason why I kind of might build Haradrim because
I'm thinking
shadow
about it as well. I've got
shadow
the gear
crystals
for
I've
it,
just got
so why not?
right. So I'll probably do that. I mean, I have. Um, I've done Wubed and Rebel and Tibeb at the moment. I've kind of left the other guy. What's his name?
You have to.
Yeftu. I wasn't too impressed with him going through the Tibeb campaign.
Mm.
I found he wasn't really because of the free one you get. I was like, he's pretty average.
Yeah.
But also the kits that you get in those marquee campaigns
Yeah,
are
they're
different to
pretty.
the kits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to say, but I'll build him last. I think I'll do Tibeb and the next marquee, and then I'll do Yeftu last. Um, but yeah, it's yeah, that whole kind of raid fuck up was interesting. I could understand the anger, but I could kind of understand the actions that they needed to take to correct it.
Mm.
It was just a shit situation all up. Like,
A probably unpopular opinion, but if you're intentionally doing an exploit and you lose raid keys, that's on you. don't exploit it. Like,
I mean, like I said, two's an accident.
yeah,
I can maybe
yeah.
say three's an accident if you got quick fingers.
Two would happen to me because I'm dumb and I'd be like, yeah, I didn't claim these before.
Right. So two's an accident, maybe three if I'm lenient, but any more than that, you
Yeah,
know what you're doing, right?
yeah,
You know there's an issue and you're taking full advantage of
yes,
it. So the fact that they temporary banned, I think is fine. I think that needed to be done. Maybe they could have actioned it quicker where, you know, they reversed it and returned the accounts quicker.
mm,
Maybe. But at the end of the day, I think what they did was the right course of action.
yeah.
Just next time, if there's an issue, don't try to exploit it. I think that's the moral of the story here. Um,
Surprise Pikachu face exploits, gets punished.
uh, do we want to quickly talk about account progress? We've been going for a while.
Sure.
Um, so I just hit 100,000.
Yes.
So that was a big
First one in the
milestone.
guild.
First one in our guild, yes. And I think like everyone, my Rivendell team is my strongest squad power, as they call it here. I keep calling it strongest team power because that's what MSF
Yeah.
calls it,
Yeah.
but it's SSP here, strongest squad power.
Mm.
Um, believe they're about 28k. And really not much else I can do with them apart from gaining stars, which is going to take some time.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think Isengard, I think, are my next strongest team, mainly because they've been my shadow team.
I think that might be mine as well. Yeah.
So I've I ran through chapter 5 with them, so I had to get them to a decent levels.
Mm.
Um, and then I'd say probably now RTR.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I've built up maybe as my third team.
I called that, by the way.
You did.
Yeah, RTR is definitely what I'm working on next. I think they're going to be pretty solid throughout the whole raid.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm building them up. So I'm my hope is to get two decent difficulty 3 teams, and I think between Rivendell and RTR, I think I'll get that.
Yeah.
And then on the side, I'm kind of building Rohan and some of Haradrim.
Mm.
And I might do a hybrid between them.
Yeah.
Um, while I I'm definitely not going to build all 5 Rohans.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to.
No reason to. So I'll do the trio and add 2, and so that's same with Haradrim.
Mm.
But yeah, that's where mine's at. What
Yeah.
about you? I'd say
Um,
probably similar.
yeah, pretty similar. My elves, I think 27k. Um, my RTR is what I'm building on currently. I'll probably build Haradrim as well. I don't know if I'll do it before RTR, probably not.
Hmm.
But it won't take long to get them up besides gold because I've just got tons of shadow gear just sitting there.
It's the gold. It's the gold. That's
Yeah, it's
the
the
issue.
gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the same with any kind of anything really to do in the game. We're just
Yeah.
starving for gold, and the raids have helped, and the calendar that they've released is
The
useful.
raid was a good chunky amount of gold.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That
It,
helped a
it
lot.
went immediately, but it was like a good 300, 400k.
300k. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus whatever you got in your individual participation as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So and as we get more of these, it'll do well in terms of gaining gold. But yeah, my main focus is RTR at the moment. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think I've got Haradrim on the back burner mostly because they're mostly kind of tailored towards chapter 2, and that's not for a couple of weeks, so I can at
Yeah.
least work on them slowly, and then I can go hard out
Mm.
just before chapter 2. But yeah, I guess that's a decent update. We'll do this every week. Was there anything else we missed for this week's for our first Lord of the
Don't think
Rings
so.
home podcast?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We will do this hopefully on a weekly basis, give you guys an update on the game, our progress, our thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please do click that follow, give us a like if you enjoyed this content, and provide any comments on what you want to hear or see for future episodes. Until then, we'll catch you guys next time.